welcome to Innovate Newport. This is our final session of the Blue NU Summer Speaker Series. We're so glad you made time to come today, get out of the sweltering heat. Please feel free to grab a cold beer or water or snacks back there. We do have restrooms on this floor out to your right and left. We do ask that if you have not been vaccinated, that you wear a mask. It's required, and if you are vaccinated, it's your choice. We just recommend it. And I think that might be it for housekeeping. But again, thank you for coming. I have the pleasure of introducing two very accomplished people here. They are going to be talking about the future of blue technology in Rhode Island and beyond. First, to your left.
Announcing himself.
We have Toby Stapleton. He is the VP of Marine and Oceanographic Technology Network. Dr. Tobias Stapleton is the Managing Director of the Blue Innovation Symposium, the largest blue technology conference in New England. He has decades of experience working to support the region's blue technology industry and frequently speaks about the future of the blue economy at international conferences. He is the Vice President of the Marine and Oceanographic Technology Network, and an editorial board member of Ocean News and Technology magazine. To your right, we have Justin Manley. He is an innovative technologist and executive with experience in startup, public corporation, academic, and public sectors. Mr. Manley is a recognized leader in uncrewed systems development and operations. After professional roles at MIT, supporting NOAA, and in the private sector, he founded Just Innovation, Inc. in 2015, where he supports clients with a focus on uncrewed and undersea systems. He is dedicated to innovation and entrepreneurship, advising numerous startup companies as well as the X Prize Foundation. Mr. Manley is a senior member of IEEE, a fellow of the Institute of Marine Engineering, Science and Technology, and the president-elect of Marine Technology Society. Welcome, gentlemen. So happy you're here. I'm going to hand the mic to Toby to start. As with all of our Blue NU sessions, this is recorded, and all will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and website for your viewing, and you can feel free to share them. And thank you, Toby.
Great. Thanks, Molly. Hello, everyone. Once again, I'm Toby Stapleton, and I'm pleased to be here today. And I want to start off by just thanking Molly for putting this series of programs together. If any of you have been following the Blue NU programming this summer, you know that Molly has put together people that are not just important to Rhode Island's blue economy, but to the region's blue economy. So give us a round of applause for Molly. Thanks. So what we thought we would end this series with is an overview of two things. Really, I'm going to talk about what's happening in general in the blue economy in New England briefly, and then talk about some things that are happening in industry. I'm going to, backing up, I'm going to define what the blue economy is just so that we're all on the same page. And specifically blue technology, which is the focus of Justin and I's presentation today. And then hand it over to Justin Manley. And I should start by saying that Justin is not only a co-conspirator with the Blue Innovation Symposium, but when I get stuck frequently on marine technology issues, it's Justin who I turn to get answers. So this is, I think, a good series of presentations to end the programming. So with that, as I mentioned, what I'm going to do is to give a very high-level overview of what's happening in New England, talk specifically about Rhode Island, and then also talk about offshore wind, because it's driving a lot of excitement, especially publicly in terms of the blue economy. So we'll talk about what's happening there, and then talk about what's next specifically in blue tech. And the three pictures here, obviously offshore wind, but at the bottom is a company called Far Sounder, which makes forward-looking sonar systems for cruise ships, the Navy, and others, based right here in Rhode Island. And another company called Dive Technologies, which is building what's called a large displacement autonomous underwater vehicle that's being built within roughly a 40 square mile radius of where we sit today. with obvious Navy applications. So there's a lot going on here within the region, and a lot of it is because of these anchor institutions that we have here, including the Navy. So what is the blue economy? I thought I would start with this. And it's obviously economic activity tied to the water. So in Rhode Island, that means pretty much everything that we think it means, which is tourism, it's sailing, recreational and competitive. It's marine robotics. It's going to be offshore wind, and it's traditional seafood. It's aquaculture and so on. So it's really everything. Except for things like oil and gas. But even in the oil and gas industry, which has an offshore component to it, the sensors and marine robotics that are made to enable those industries are produced right here within southern New England. So blue technology are the systems that are designed to address these critical areas. And in turn, these industries drive second and third tier supply chain partners like composite manufacturers, software platform developers, software companies, and so on. And what I've said often and probably frequently, at least over the last year, is that Rhode Island has one of the densest and most diverse blue economy ecosystems in the world. And really, where we sit here, Aquidneck Island is really at the heart of that because we're defense tech heavy, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. And so when we look at New England, and it's really southern New England that this is driven by. Southern New England, we have a strong defense focus, and that's because of Naval Station Newport, also the U.S. Naval, Naval.
Undersea Warfare?
No, not Newark. Yeah, that's the easy one. Naval Undersea Warfare Center.
War College?
War College. Thank you, Justin. Yeah, so the War College, which I should know like the back of my hand. So the War College, Naval Station Newport, and Newark are drivers, and really Newark are drivers in the innovation ecosystem, driving companies to locate here so that as they're starting up, building a marine robotics or sensors platform company, they are in close proximity. But it's also why all of the major defense contractors have offices right here on Aquidneck Island. We have traditional fisheries, the largest seafood port in the country in terms of the dollar value of landed catch is here in southern New England. We have strong anchor institutions, including the University of Rhode Island, the Navy, as I mentioned before, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. So world-class organizations that are driving research and innovation in the space, robotics and sensors. And we have these emerging industries and some of them have been a focus of the Blue and You programming over the last few weeks, including offshore wind, which I've got a separate slide on, but it's driving excitement in the industry because it's not only going to help diversify where we get energy from here in New England, but it's also, there's a promise of job creation and economic development and innovation in the space. What we also, as part of that, some of you know, Gina Raimondo, while she was still governor, announced that she wanted by 2030 Rhode Island to be 100% powered by renewable energy. So of course that means solar, it means wind, but it also means alternative sources of alternative energy, including offshore wind and marine renewable energy. And so what we've seen in New England is a number of companies that are in the marine renewable energy industry, making things like wave energy converter systems, or in one case, a company that uses wave energy converters to convert wave energy into power that powers, in this case, desalination plants around the world. And we're also seeing a increase in autonomous and surface vehicles. In New England alone, there's a number of startups throughout New England that are creating systems that will float on top of the water that are autonomously powered, or in some cases actually wind powered. There are sail drones and things like that that have taken root here for the same reasons that the traditional marine tech industry or the defense tech industry has. And other verticals are popping up, for instance, battery and power systems. Because these undersea, underwater vehicles and surface vehicles, for that matter, need energy, and some of them, quite a bit of it, we're seeing new innovations or new companies trying to innovate on battery and power systems, and we're also seeing acquisition activity in that space as well, where the primes or those defense contractors are looking for innovations and acquiring companies that they think might have the technology that solves this power and energy problem. So when we look at that this region, it was really somebody standing in Connecticut who coined the phrase the Silicon Valley of marine technology, which we have all economic development officials throughout the region then took it and applied it to their particular region. I'm going to be no different and say that this is a corridor. So if we look at southern New England and we think of it as a marine technology corridor, the two anchor institutions have been for a long time the Navy on one side and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute on the other. If we extend, again, just looking at New England, in Connecticut we have a traditional submarine building ecosystem with General Dynamics electric boat and all of the rest of the supply chain that supports that industry through Rhode Island, southeastern Mass, and down to Cape Cod, where you have the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, a traditional oceanographic, a program that Justin knows well, a program in partnership with MIT, and it drives research and innovation, and is one of the reasons why you see along this corridor a number of startups who have gone on, companies that started up here in the region that have gone on to become household names in marine tech. And so companies like Bluefin Robotics and Hydroid, McLean, McCartney, and others. Companies making underwater autonomous vehicles and sensors and so on. So one of the things I wanted to touch on today is that a lot has changed over the last 6 years when we look at blue technology. In fact, 6 years ago, blue really hadn't come into the nomenclature yet. When we were talking about anything that went under the water or on top of the water or monitored the water, it was marine technology. And there weren't that many people from a economic development sense or really looking to create ecosystems throughout the country that would support blue technology, or what we today call blue technology. Today, there's been an increased interest in the blue economy, and particularly with policymakers and legislators and economic development officials, but also investors. We're seeing investors now move into blue tech for a number of reasons, but not the least of which is that the industry has matured. So if we look at, certainly over the last few years, there have been a number of high-profile acquisitions by big defense companies in the blue tech space, which now have created a benchmark for investment activity and is bringing in companies to not only invest, but to support. So we're seeing organizations being created to support blue technology startups and scale-up companies. We're seeing investors now bring money into a space that was largely absent of institutional investors or essentially professional money. And we're seeing new organizations. So the organizations here in New England, for sure, I'm going to leave a few out, but because there's a number of them. But we have 401 Tech Bridge. I know that if you've been attending this series, you've heard from the executive director, Christian Cowan. We have Mass Challenge, which has now created a Blue Track, which is an accelerator program, a traditional accelerator program that has been focused, sort of has been industry agnostic, has created a Blue Track. The University of Rhode Island, of course, not only has a School of Oceanography, but has been developing, they have researchers there that are developing research as well as technology that enable and power the blue economy. The Southern New England Defense Industry Association, the State of Rhode Island's Economic Development Organization, of course the Navy, and even a group like the Blue Angels, which is an angel investment group that was formed under Sea Ahead, which is another group that has been created over the last 6 years that supports in a number of ways through accelerator programs, mentorship, and so on, the Blue Economy, and the Blue Institute, which is created, amongst other things, a Blue Accelerator program that works with companies to help them find their way or get started in blue technology, not necessarily just blue technology, but in the blue economy itself. So when we look at, so specifically, again, the accelerator programs are important to the future of the blue economy for a number of reasons. And that is, if you look at the support mechanisms that have been here, and if you look at the industry that has been here in blue tech, it's been very defense focused for the reasons I mentioned before. But we're seeing, because of that, we're seeing companies both look to locate within the region, who are developing those sensors and robotics, because we have these institutions that we have major commercial buyers, and by way of the large defense tech companies, we have research organizations like the University of Rhode Island, Woods Hole, and others. And so what we're seeing is a lot of startup activity and scale-up activity both move into the region as well as grow up within the region. And because of that, we're seeing a growth in vehicles, underwater vehicles, sensors, and battery and power systems, and data analytics and machine learning, particularly in the seafood and aquaculture space. So what's happening in offshore wind? Because that seems to be driving a lot of excitement, or at least a lot of headlines. And what's happening is, as many of you know, Rhode Island is notable for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that it has the first offshore wind farm in the country off the coast of Block Island. And what is happening now in that space is that there are now 3 wind companies coming into the region who will be locating within southern New England, will be hiring within southern New England, will be engaging with companies in southern New England to site wind farms off the coast of southern New England. And as part of that, in addition to the more than $400 million raised in offshore wind farm leases, you've got companies like Ørsted, which have established their innovation center here in Rhode Island. You've got the region's colleges and universities developing training programs, and you've had significant port development to enable the industry to site those turbines within ports like Quonset Point and the Port of New Bedford in Massachusetts. So one of the things that is driving the excitement, or why offshore wind is driving the excitement, in addition to the fact that it will diversify where energy comes from to New England, or essentially, is that it promises to have a significant economic impact on the region, and could lead, by some estimates, to more than 16,000 jobs created in the Northeast alone. So what are we doing to foster innovation and networking and partnerships within southern New England? A couple ways. In addition to the organizations that I mentioned, one of them that I'm a part of is a group called the Marine and Oceanographic Technology Network that has been around since 1995. We're a nonprofit organization that is run by a volunteer board of directors, and we represent some of the leading companies and organizations in the blue economy, or specifically in this case, blue technology in New England, from Connecticut through Massachusetts. And what we did pre-COVID, just like everyone else, we had networking events where we got together face-to-face over beers. So this is a good facsimile of that, or actually it's not even a facsimile, it is that. So what we're looking to do, like other organizations, is figure out how we continue to engage and bring value to the membership without having the ability to, right now, get together face-to-face as we used to. And the other is right here in Rhode Island, right here in actually Aquidneck Island in Middletown and Newport, we created the Blue Innovation Symposium, which, as Molly mentioned in the beginning, it's become the largest blue tech conference in New England, and it brings together the industry from scale-up companies that are beyond the prototype stage, through those that are defense contractors and well-established blue technology companies. And we, obviously this year we're impacted by COVID-19, but we expect at the end of February of 2022 to hold this program face-to-face in Middletown and in conjunction with the Chamber and other organizations, including the University of Rhode Island and 401 Tech Bridge, right here in Middletown and Newport, and hope to have programming that actually operates from here. So, takeaways. Offshore wind developers are going to need to partner with industry. So what we're seeing is, companies, both service providers as well as those manufacturing tech, looking at the RFPs and other opportunities to work with the offshore wind industry, coming out and looking for ways to partner, looking for ways to contract with them. And some of the programming that you may have seen, both here and outside, being sponsored by the state and other organizations, have really been centered around how to identify, how to partner with the offshore wind industry. And then lastly, there's a lot of opportunities for organizations to collaborate and partner around things like research and development, product development, and testing. And I think the future, at least the near-term future in blue tech, is that you're going to see more organizations looking to partner for the purpose of fostering blue tech organizations. And I think the most recent example of that is 401 Tech Bridge and Mass Challenge's Blue Track partnering together to support and grow blue technology companies that are participating in that accelerator program. So there's a lot happening, and to talk about the macro view of what's happening in the future of blue tech, I'm going to hand this over to Justin. So, Justin.
Thank you. Need that too. Thanks, Toby. I'm going to do that. So, yeah, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Some of you have seen me do these road shows before. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about technology in particular, not particular types or vehicles or this or that, but I'm going to try to give you a big picture sense of how technology and some big economic forces are interacting in this thing that we are calling the blue economy. And I like to start here. Side note, so we all may have different blue economy definitions. This one essentially traces back to a conservation-focused organization, WWF. But A, it's a pretty picture. B, it's got some large numbers on it. So whether we buy the numbers in detail or not, it gives us this big picture view and this impact. Some important things. Toby's talked about the wind sector in particular, alluded to defense. I'm going to spend a little time here looking at the shipping industry, carbon capture as a general concept where the ocean is concerned, and then some marine conservation elements. And what hopefully you'll take away from this is a sense of why a business or a technologist may want to enter into this sector. What makes it compelling and appealing over perhaps the next decade or longer to get involved in. So at the top, the first two I want to talk about, shipping and carbon. Again, if you buy these numbers, this is over half of the blue economy, and all of a sudden that's an awful lot of trillions of dollars. It's even more trillions of dollars than you're reading about in the news, being fought about in DC, right? If you thought those were big trillions, these are bigger trillions, right? So, okay, maybe we should pay attention. This is a recent Forbes article, a commentary on my slide format. What you sort of see is screen grabs from publicly available information, and if it's in blue, it sort of indicates the things I think we should think about, right? So this was a Forbes article talking about how shipping is sort of an underappreciated source of emissions. These articles often take a viewpoint. This one may or may not have been balanced. Right? One could argue air cargo, shipping our laptops and iPhones by airplanes may or may not be better than shipping them by container, right? How soon do you need your phone? But regardless, it points to the fact that we, whether we're shopping online or walking into a retailer, we as consumers have very little real visibility and connectivity to the emissions cost, right? We may understand the shipping cost, but these days, if we're Amazon Prime subscribers, like shipping has become free too, right? You no longer think about it. So this points to an information economy play. It's a lot of retail, it's a lot of consumer, it's a lot of branding opportunity, right? So what this means is you don't have to be a hardcore engineer to get involved in this. You can be a marketing major, right? Find yourself some software programmers, come up with the right idea and engage, right? So this is becoming known. Meanwhile, the industry is looking at solving their problems, and there's lots of conversation about alternative fuels. And apologies if the slide font is a little small. This is a $1 billion investment by the Korean government in eco-friendly shipping. And you know, you can go research the program. My favorite, you type the program name into a Google search engine for images and you get those two pictures. Why did I do that? Well, one picture is this beautiful green leafy boat, right? That's well marketed. The other is the reality of what happens in Korean shipyards today. Massive infrastructure, building huge steel structures that float in the ocean. And what do you see in there besides ships? You see drilling platforms, right? So this is a very savvy move on the part of the government, right? The big industry. What's the industry doing? They're doubling the money. So the two largest shipyards in Korea are going out to the public markets to raise roughly another $2 billion to leverage what their government is investing to build green ships, right? This is compelling stuff. There are big numbers involved. Now, this last article, you can go follow the link after the fact. We can get you copies. But if you read that case study that I've linked there, it's about using fuel cells to power ships. That's cool. Fuel cells should be cleaner. You know what kind of ship they're going to power? A crude tanker, right? So again, this is, you know, there's lots of interesting things and discoveries one can make in this space. But again, big money, big activity. Another dynamic, wind, right? Here we are in New England. We've said New England a lot, right? Lots of history, right? What did we used to do? We had sailing ships, right? New England became an economic powerhouse because our captains sailed the globe trading goods. Well, now there's going to be sailing vessels trading goods. In this case, French handbags are going to be shipped by sailboat. This is fabulous. Are you in a hurry for your handbag? Maybe you can wait. Maybe you'll pay even more if it takes longer to get to you, right? Because you feel better about it. This is all kind of compelling and exciting. I love it, right? As a person who cares about the future of the planet, that's great. But then when you dig into this, what you find out is this is a commitment to move half of their annual shipments by sail. Once they're moving all their annual shipments by sail, it's going to be 2 boats, right? So it just turns out this one particular luxury good maker doesn't move all that much goods, right? But hey, it's a start. But if it becomes a movement, and again, back to my earlier commentary about consumer awareness, how much of our stuff has to move fast? How much of our stuff has to be manufactured elsewhere is a whole nother question, right? The 3D printing industry would be telling me just, oh, forget it, we'll do it all here. But you get the point. So the slow boat might lead to stronger sales. Different story in wind all of a sudden, right? So this is a specialized cargo carrier. They specialize in what's called ro-ro vessels, roll on, roll off. They move vehicles. And they have plans within 5 years to have a wind-powered vehicle carrier. This is really interesting, right? Like the schedule demands and the specialization of moving vehicles, it's a little more contained than container ships. They typically move on known routes from certain places to certain places, and they have figured out that they can manage this and they can make this happen, right? So again, wind, really interesting dynamics. Not everything is going to end up moving by wind, but hey, you know, if your next imported car from Europe got here by wind, that's kind of cool, right? So let's change the game. That was shipping. I'm going to talk about carbon, right? In particular, I'm going to talk about carbon capture and sequestration. So the first problem is, can we actually extract CO2 from the atmosphere in a meaningful way? These are just a handful of investments that are being made that can make this possible. So now we're going to assume, okay, we're taking this carbon out of the air. What happens? Well, it turns out often you make it into a liquefied form. Okay, what happens next? Well, one thing is if you're a small startup, you may be trying to capture that CO2 on a ship. This is a company that's working with a bunch of cool tech, and you can sort of see bits and pieces. They want to actually put containers on the ships to suck the CO2 out of the ship emissions right there. Lots of questions about what happens next. But hey, cool, startup. They're going to back market. What if you're a super major? Again, this is a Forbes article. Read that headline. Carbon capture business may become as big as the oil and gas business within 30 years, right? So if you've been reading your articles about ExxonMobil and you feel like they were obstructionist, well, now ExxonMobil's got an answer for you. It's in the links you can follow on the blue sides. They're going to turn right around and pump all that CO2 back underground. But let's look at that a little closer. I've sort of zoomed up, and again, hopefully everybody can read all this. What does this really mean? Well, it says that you're going to push it all the way underground and it's going to be safely sealed away, right? Today, we worry about oil leaks, right? And oil spills, and those are not good for the environment. In the future, we may have to worry about CO2 leaking out of our storage containers. So that essentially implies that all the economic activity associated today, which is still, by the way, massive, right? We talk about renewables, but all the work we do to pull liquid out of the ground, including out of the seafloor, and move it around the planet, is just going to turn around and go in the opposite direction. So again, think about that Forbes industry. So if you think that investing in pipes from the oil industry, I was just at a big show in Houston, there's still a lot of pipes on display. Pipes are still going to be needed, probably, just hopefully in this case for a virtuous cause. So anyway, point being, big business again. These are bold plans. I want to talk a little bit now about marine conservation, and in particular because marine conservation has suffered, in my opinion, from innovation and investment. It is a huge piece of the ocean economy. That little corner, that relates to our good seafood. We're going to go have nice oysters that weren't impacted by a negative environment. Are we going to continue to be able to eat the kinds of seafood we want, or are they going to get fished out of the sea? Are we going to be able to go snorkeling and scuba diving and surfing or sailing, right? These are all important and massive pieces of the economy, and they're challenges. Traditionally, conservation has been essentially not a tech-driven activity. It's an advocacy and a policy-driven kind of activity. And we're starting to see that change. So just a couple of examples. These are two so-called ocean impact funds. They have slightly different investing philosophies and approaches, but they both are investors, which means they're going to take capital, they're going to deploy it, and they expect to make money on their capital. But the outcomes of those investments are anticipated to have positive impacts on ocean health, right? So this is supposed to be a virtuous cycle. And what's happening now is all of a sudden, you're motivating markets. You're motivating technologists, you're motivating buyers and sellers. None of these compare, just to be honest, clear, okay? This is nothing compared to classic Silicon Valley, and there's more money going into chasing the next TikTok competitor than these two funds combined. But they exist, and they're an important start. So just a couple more examples. There are ways now for inspired technologists and innovators to go out and help their path to market. Ocean Exchange is an activity where you can win prize money just for presenting your idea. Schmidt Marine Technology Partners and OceanKind are philanthropies that will help you de-risk your technology so that you can eventually succeed in the market. Right? So this is all really compelling and new. None of this was on scene, as Toby was alluding to, blue, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Technically, Ocean Exchange has been around for 10 years, but this dynamic is very, very fresh. So I'm going to stop there. We're going to move into a Q&A. Hopefully what I've left you with is an impression that this blue economy, A, is a big deal, B, is dynamic and exciting, and C, is just worth thinking about and paying attention to. So Toby and I think we'll hand this over for questions and look forward to a discussion.
Anybody? Yes.
Hi, I'm Alessandra, and I work with and for a autonomous surface vehicle company, which means a robotic vessel that floats on top of the water. Do you guys need this? Hi. And we're in Marblehead, Massachusetts, so southern New England still, I think. My question is, the pros and cons of how cozy and geographically proximate we are. The industry, I see even in my 4 years in it, people changing jobs and jumping from one place to another, and you go to a conference and you recognize them and they're wearing a new hat, and all that's great. As a newcomer to the field, when you're a startup and the ocean is this big giant marketplace and theater to compete in, we feel we might need larger companies from elsewhere. And I guess this is just sort of a thinly veiled plea for your guidance in connecting to bigger companies with deeper resources, given, and maybe they're not in New England. I'm just sort of wondering if you have advice on that front.
I'll let you go first if you have a thought.
Yeah, I'll let Justin think about that for a moment. But yeah, I think, well, one, on the that how you framed the ecosystem is correct. If you go to, for instance, that MOTN group, the Marine and Oceanographic Technology Network, at our annual meetings, when we had them face-to-face pre-COVID, it was the same thing. Where are you now? I'm with this company, I'm with that company. And so there is a lot of movement, especially with engineers and people that are uniquely qualified to work in this environment. Now, what that does, if you look at the Silicon Valley ecosystem, it helps to ensure that you've got an evergreen in terms of workforce, where if you are, scaling up a company, starting a company, you've got some access to talented mechanical and electrical engineers, oceanographers, and people that know how to put stuff into the water. From a company perspective, one of the most effective ways to reach industry in this space is trade shows. And I know you're actively participating in some, like the Blue Innovation Symposium, but it is Oceanology International. It's OTC that Justin just came back from, and so that's a bit anecdotal from my perspective. I'm sure Justin's got an answer here, but to engage with big companies, the trade shows really are, in my mind, an effective way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd endorse what Toby said. I think that the thing I'd bring back to your question, maybe there's two parts, and maybe I'm editorializing. Apologies if I am, but the dynamics of the personnel and the staffing and sort of the regional cluster versus the global, my opinion has always been one of that's just the way it is. And you have sort of two choices. You work within that system or you break out of it. And so, my little side story, right, a startup company I was involved with called Liquid Robotics, the reason I joined that startup and left the cozy confines and engaged Silicon Valley is because a bunch of lunatics raised an amazing amount of money to go do something that was a little nutty. And it worked out mostly, depending on your filter, right? And so I think we as a community should relish these constructive interference moments when we can make things happen. Different part of your question, right? So like you make your choice. Do you want to be part of the community and live with it the way it is, or do you want to try to force it to change, or somewhere in between, right? And I don't mean to sound combative about any of this, but it's just that's human nature. In terms of the big company question, I think Toby's right. I think the other question is to think very, very carefully about what you want from big companies. You mentioned resources. Maybe you actually want money, at which point maybe you don't actually want big companies. Maybe you want big purchase orders. You still may not want big companies for that, right? The question becomes what you're looking for and sort of being very strategic about it. Because yes, a large organization is very hard to get. Government is the same problem, by the way. Toby talked about the Navy. Even here, we forgot the name of one of the pieces of the Navy, and that didn't even go down the list of PMS 406 to PEO this, right? Yeah. So I think it's incumbent on a small player to try very hard, very early to figure out what they're looking for and what they want. Toby gave you a massive list of resources. There's others like to help you sort through that. So it's not easy, but I think being strategic early as opposed to saying, I'd like to meet big companies or I'd like to meet the Navy, right? That's not necessarily the best place to start. And my last comment, cycling back, use the cozy community. I would argue Toby refers to a MOTN meeting. Like, for the most part, if you walk into that room And as long as you're genuine in your sort of, hey, I kind of need help, I need advice, I want to meet people, I would say that this community we inhabit is one of the most cordial and supportive I've seen, right? So I guess just ask for help.
Any other questions? Yes, Judith.
Hi, first, it's Judith. Get in touch with me because I've got some introductions for you. Great presentation, you guys. I think I heard the word virtuous a dozen times, right? Can you guys elaborate? Do you think the virtuous is just the shiny object right now because the administration has changed in Washington? Or do you think we're going to really see a concerted effort long-term with a long-term planning around this? And no pressure.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to give you a reaction. I may have overplayed my violin of virtuosity. But look, I think the fundamental reality is the economic forces have already been unleashed. Political forces and social forces ebb and flow, and they change color and they change direction. But my opinion, and this is just a personal one, but based on what I see when I go out and about, the economic forces have already been unleashed. They may take a while to do it on their own, and they may run into headwinds or tailwinds, depending on all those other forces. But my daughter is going to turn 15 shortly. And, by the time my daughter retires, I have every expectation that she will recognize a point in her life when things were totally different. She'll be just old enough, but my grandchildren will inhabit an entirely different approach to the interaction of the economy and human and planetary health. I feel that. Now, that's all I can tell you is that I could be completely wrong, could all go to hell in a handbasket, but I don't think we're blue washing. So let's go back to it. I think there are some businesses are blue washing. Many don't know what to do, and the ones that are leading are doing it through a combination of, I'll give them credit, they're virtuous people and they're capitalists, and they see where the money's going to be in the future. So I don't know. That's a strong opinion, but that's the one I hold.
Yeah, well, Judy, I'm an optimist, but to be mercenary about this, with the new administration, it is true that you're going to see an increase in funding from NOAA and even the Department of Energy, which has been not so quietly funding things like these wave energy converters and marine renewable energy. And we have some significant activity in New England, including in Maine. This company ORPC is kind of become a brand name within that space. So the worry, I think, was that we would move away from what got us here, which was spending on these newer systems like underwater autonomous vehicles. But today, I think Justin can attest to this, that it's widely recognized that navies around the world are investing, governments are investing in autonomous systems. So it's unlikely we're going to see a disinvestment or a decrease, at least in the short term, in activity there. What we're going to see is an increase in activity for more environmental or ocean monitoring systems that will better help us gauge the effect of the oceans on the environment and the environment on the ocean. So the effect of the oceans on climate change and the effect of climate change on the oceans, and that includes sea level rise, which could impact a city like Newport. So I think the future in terms of the development of tech, but also understanding these as real problems that need to be addressed, not superficially, but in not something that's going to be fixed in 6 months, but 6 years or 10 years, I think is here, and that seems to be sticking.
Thank you both. Other questions?
Thank you. What would we need in a workforce pipeline, starting from kindergarten to high school to the university level? What type of workers are you looking for?
I've got ideas, but you're welcome to go first.
I'll be quick then. So with this, one of my beliefs has been that this really has to start in the K through 12 environment, right? There's things that you can do, and we do workforce training. For electric boat, for instance, you've got welders and pipe fitters and things, and then in college, this is an industry that requires skill to get into right now. So you need mechanical engineers, you need marine architects, naval architects, and so on. So it's a skilled workforce, and that, from a workforce development standpoint, poses a good picture. But you have to understand what the real needs are, and part of that is understanding what is going on in this space in terms of industry. What does the industry need, and also getting especially in the K through 12 environment, an understanding of what those opportunities look like. And this is a challenge for the region. For instance, I can remember Cape Cod, for instance. I was giving a presentation at the Cape Cod Technology Council years ago, and there, if you grow up on the Cape, which is a big geography actually, but you don't know what you don't know. So you look around and you see that there's construction jobs and landscaping jobs and service industry. So if you go to college, you go away, right? So you don't come back because the perception is that there's no jobs on the Cape, right? And so I think partially in Newport especially, there might be, like the north end of Newport, not to get too specific, there may be a certain population that just doesn't know that in their backyard you've got the defense industry and these marine tech jobs. And if they don't know that exists, they don't know what it takes to break into those jobs. And so part of it is understanding what that environment looks like, and then understanding what the needs are.
Yeah, Emil, and I'll react to what was Toby was saying at the end there. The other piece of it is, I'll call it consciousness of ocean, right? And so maybe that community, I don't know, maybe that community doesn't surf or sail or scuba dive even though they might live here in Rhode Island, right? Ocean state, right? So one of the things, and this goes for the whole country, right? I used to work with NOAA's Ocean Exploration Program, and we'd have this joke about, what's the geographic midpoint of the U.S. or the farthest point from an ocean, and who lives there, and how do we get them to care about exploring the ocean, right? I'm misremembering it. It was a long time ago. But the point is, workforce awareness just of the 2/3 of the planet that we don't inhabit is a huge issue, right? And I say that because my next profound belief at this point as an employer, so I advise a variety of startup companies. One of my companies just closed a seed round. We're in the process of hiring. We are working on some crazy ideas. And the leadership team's consensus is, first and foremost, we need amazing talent. Second, we need talent that believes in the vision. And after that, we'll worry about their degrees and their experience, right? Now, at the moment, that's a little unfair because at the moment we're starting, that's a very specialized team, right? That's the kickoff engineering team. That's a little different. Eventually, we will drift down to a point where we're going to need, if this company succeeds, we're going to need the same skill set as the HVAC technician that comes to my house. We're going to need more of those people than those people I just described. So the engineering and technical team will create amazing things. We have a vision of large activity. Lots of human beings will be involved in care and feeding of devices and machines. And they need to know how to not electrocute themselves. They need to know which plug to put where. They're probably going to need skills related, not writing code, but understanding how ones and zeros interact with physical bits, right? But literally, what I just described, that's when the person comes, inevitably, it seems to have been a person in their 20s, shows up to take care of my, by the way, oil-powered boiler in the basement of my house, right? Those are the skills they have. And there's a digital device that they plug in, and then there's the bucket, right? So really, I think those in the long run are the kinds of skills we're looking at. And my last comment on this front too is I think it's incumbent on the community, and we're doing this, the Marine Technology Society I work in, we're looking at things like certifications as opposed to plain out degrees, right? So we've developed, we're starting at the top with a thing we call Chartered Marine Technologist, which is meant to be a credential that eventually will be recognized by employers to mean something specific in this field, regardless of what the underlying degrees the person holds are. And eventually we're going to bring that down to sort of, I say lower levels. I don't mean that to be diminishing of those individuals, but you know, a hierarchy of certification.
I don't think I need that. On that K-12 space, there's a disconnect, I think, and I'm just trying, I've been to a lot of these this summer, and the adults have been fabulous, and I've learned a lot. How do we take that, and this question's been asked at each series by different people, how do we take that into the classroom? I'm getting very nitty-gritty about it, but you have these networks for adults, you know, the engineers and the technology, we have lots of those, Synedia, we have lots of those. But how do we get into, plant those seeds in the K-12 space? It's not happening. It's, you know, you mentioned getting the kids on the water. We do sail Newport with the kids. We do teach them how to swim. But these are little atomized spots. Where's the ecosystem that will bring all of those together and actually get those kids thinking about work? Because I do know in the North End, even with CCRI, when I work with sixth grade kids, they're like, oh yeah, we sneak in there, we know where the computer lab is. They shouldn't have to sneak in. They should know that that's a place where they can actually go and touch stuff without getting caught. So where's the ecosystem for that space?
Yeah, I'll start with just sort of an unsatisfactorily parochial answer. So the one thing I participate in that I try to help contribute to that. So I'm affiliated with an organization that runs a student robotics competition, right? It's the MATE student ROV competition. We're immensely proud of ourselves in a non-COVID year to hit, 20,000 people maybe, right? Planet-wide, okay? So it's nowhere near enough, right? But what I can tell you, I am the chief judge of that competition, and when I sit there and I am confronted with even a middle school team, right, who have built an ocean robot while they put it in a swimming pool, I know that those people will eventually end up succeeding in a workforce, maybe not even in the ocean workforce, right? So that I don't know how to solve the problem at scale, but I know that there are things that work. So my answer would be to try to figure out how to scale those things that work within the ocean STEM, let's just call, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Like, there are things that work, and I think there are people who would like to scale. I recognize that's a really hard problem and not necessarily satisfactory, but that's the one thing I know that makes a difference. Sea perch is, it's the spectrum. Sea perch is conceptually similar.
My son did it in 5th grade. He's now at the Naval Academy. It probably did affect him,
Yep.
A lot of his friends that are living in the North End that have just graduated from high school, and I asked them about that, and whatever happened between 5th grade and 12th grade, they did not keep that skill set so that they can go to a school that they can continue their engineering program. So I think that there's an ecosystem that's lacking for teachers, community. How do we get them thinking about the blue economy so that all of this wonderful exchange that we've had this summer isn't just air?
My one quick, I'll make sure Toby gets a word in, but so, said 15-year-old daughter, we're hearing from one of her friends, her life aspiration is to become a ski bum, okay? Well, if I could turn her aspiration to be a surf bum, that'd be a start, right? Like, because you know what? The ocean community cannot solve the problem of a 15-year-old girl whose life aspiration is to be a ski bum. That's a different level of societal problem or whatever it is, right? But what the ocean community could do is if she wanted to be a surf bum, we could connect her to the blue economy, and maybe she'd eventually realize, oh wait, I want to design and sell surfboards, or I want to build technology to protect the ocean, right? It's a great question. Wish I had more for you. I'm sure Toby, who comes from the educational community.
Yeah.
I think if we get anything out of all of this wonderful summer series, is that is a big gap. We have a hole that we have to fill.
So yeah, well, I agree, and that last year I moderated the school committee debates, right, and so part of that, and that's just a reminder that this is a problem that has to be solved holistically. This isn't, you can't just solve this and then, and part of it is schools are everywhere underfunded, right, and so and resource constrained everywhere, right, and so the. No, I agree. I agree, but it's a prioritization thing, right? So schools have priorities, and it's not always that especially in these blue economies or ocean economies where the ocean or the waterway, the Mississippi River, the Atlantic Ocean for that matter, play in such an important role in those economies that again you've got constituencies who are you're just not aware of those in environments like again the Naval Academy example I think is a good one where somebody participated that may have informed his thinking about things and led him to go. Yeah, well, yeah. So I mean, like all these things are a percentage, right? But I think one of it is sort of it's that introducing the students to what's happening, and part of that is guidance counselor. Like engaging guidance counselors, I think, is a way to do that. But I think the other one that I was thinking of that I had never thought of until Justin was just talking about it. But I do think these like sea perch and other sort of prizes or competitions are a way to engage, get people excited about something. We did. A few years ago, we did as Marianne knows, we did a blue-focused startup weekend at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. And we had a team that came over from one of the islands, and it was a high school team, and they competed, and I don't know if they remember if they won, but they did really well, and yeah, second place, so that was good. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so it got them excited, and so I think you need more of that. It's engagement, but yeah, it's a holistic. It needs to be addressed holistically. Yeah.
What we're looking at is how do we inform teachers? Let's start with the teachers. Teachers know about their classroom. They do not know about the workforce. So that's something that we have to do. The community, the town councils, the school boards, they all have to understand what this blue economy is. So there has to be a lot more communication out there of what it is. And, talking to teachers, not only to parents, but to teachers, to, superintendents, school board members, because they have to fund it. Town council members, even the General Assembly. This is important. How are they going to fund it if it's this critical?
We're the ocean state, we're the city by the sea, it all makes sense. The budget at Newark is, what, 1.4 billion or something. But then if you go into our one elementary school, one middle school, and one high school, and you ask them what the blue economy is, you get two answers from, two kids whose fathers are from the Navy. So I really think this is a problem that the industry needs to start talking about more. And I don't have any answers, but there needs to be some sort of a consortium for teachers and community.
So I think, my one quick thought, right, you get two answers, right? If Toby and I go into a Moten meeting and ask for definitions of the blue economy, we'll get more, but they'll be equally confused and unclear.
I think you're misunderstanding what I said. I mean that we just don't have a concept of the workforce. As Leanne said, they're clueless about why they're in school, why they're even being taught how to do basic calculus. They have no idea that they can build a windmill or any of that sort of thing. So how do we connect those dots?
Well, that's why what I think. So I think the best way to frame this sort of in an optimistic way, it's the same reason I think the virtuous answer, right? So it might be easier to help you solve, because the question you're asking, in a sense, is actually independent of the blue economy. It's a fundamental question, right? Right. So, but the blue economy is probably more likely to succeed in being compelling. Okay, so at the end of the day, I think the huge advantage we have with blue, whether we're conservationists or educators or otherwise, is ideally it is more interesting. whether you're a biology person and you want to learn about animals, whether you're an engineer, whether you're shipwrecks, right? Don't get me started on shipwrecks, right? Like, right? But so I think if we, and by we, I really mean those who know a lot more about student engagement and solving the problems you've articulated. I can bring you sea stories and economic opportunity. I need a channel to convey them to your audience. So I think Blue brings us optimism, excitement, big numbers for growth. It's a force fit challenge for me.
I've got it. I'm just chopping at the bit. So, it's just I've been in education my whole career, so I'm right here with you all on these concerns, and I don't even know where to start because I think that needs to be a whole nother session probably. But I think, I came into this space just a few months ago, and I have been so blown away by the excitement around this topic. And while the blue economy has really always existed, we've always had we've always had the economy focused around the ocean. There's new energy around defining it. So we have an opportunity here, and this is just a start. We've got to start somewhere. So we're starting with education and awareness. If we can build awareness, even if it's this small crowd, hopefully you all are going to leave and share it with somebody, and so it's a ripple effect. So it's the ripple effect of enthusiasm and curiosity and sparking interest, and then that it will only grow from there. I mean, I think what I would love to say is, bringing in youth education and about this space and opportunities in this space is something I would love to do here at Innovate. Absolutely. Oh, definitely, because it's been said in many of these sessions that you have to get the teachers on board, and before that you have to get the administrators on board, because they're the ones that are setting the priorities, and you have to get people on board. So that's the challenge, really. But there's some momentum now and excitement, and I'm very hopeful. Set a date for
have her chair it. The process. There's a lot of stories that go on deep into this community about this issue here, and the whole southeast of New England. So Toby and I know well about it. You set a date and invite the superintendent, and then you invite everyone else.
Or the 3 superintendents on the island. I think, it could be the fishtail that comes out of this. This is what we did this summer. Because there were no educators. Well, I can't say there were no educators, but we didn't have a lot of representation from
Well, they don't. It's not targeted to them. It's not targeted.
So we hope without promising anything, we really hope to have a continuation of the Blue and You with kind of different chapters. So one might be focused on just workforce development. One might be focused on education. I'm not sure yet. We're still in development of it, but I'm just so grateful to have the panelists who have come all summer, because they are the experts. They're in it, and they're willing to share what's going on and talk from a place of experience and expertise.
Yeah, I mean, my last thought on that is that there's a lot of excitement in space right now. So you've got 2 billionaires who have just spent some time in space, and there's a well-worn kind of trope in the marine tech world, and particularly somebody who's at WHOI who would say that one of the reasons why more people have walked on the surface of the moon than the bottom of the ocean is that, frankly, it's an easier environment to deal with, that you can communicate. You've only that you've got one pressure. You don't have to worry about corrosion and pressure and lack of communication, and we can send something to Mars and communicate that with a delay, but we can communicate with it. We can get imaging back with it. And I've worked with aquaculture companies that can't communicate with a pen, and it's not that far offshore, not at this latitude, but others. And so it's a challenging environment. But part of it is sort of getting people excited about it. And I think this is one of the things that certainly I've seen, I think Justin has seen, that that the reason I mentioned that 6 years ago no one called it Blue, it's because it was really, to start a blue tech company, it required 6 MIT PhDs and millions of dollars in funding, government, SBIR or otherwise funding. And today, we've seen startups start with 1 or 2, talented folks who have gone out and, put together a company with not that much funding, and so we're seeing the sea change, figuratively speaking, and so part of that is getting people excited about the ocean, and what the possibilities are, and so on. So
Yeah.
yep.
Well, thank you, and it's 5:40, so we've got to wrap it up. But more to be continued. I mean, this is exciting, and I thank you both so very much for your time.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
For coming,
Happy
and
to be
thank
here.
you all for coming.
Cool, man.